Hello everybody and welcome back to Random Vids. So, let's talk about Total Drama. One of my favorite, TV shows out there. It's just so great, it's so fun, and it's a fun series to rewatch. So, currently I am rewatching the show, and I didn't think of it much back when I first started watching it, but something that I really like about Total Drama, for the most part, is its villains, the villain characters. Some of the characters that they, make the villains, they just do such a great job with them. On the other hand, sometimes they make some pretty horrible villains. So I figured that we go through all the villains in the Total Drama, history, and figure out which villain is my personal favorite. If you've seen, my rankings of Total Drama characters like 3 years ago, you guys are probably going to know what number one is going to be, but let's go take a look anyway. And we're going to determine how good or bad the villain is. As a character, how much of a, how well of a villain did they play? Who knows? So, with that, we're going to start in alphabetical order. So, the first one we have is... Actually, you know what? Change my mind. We'll do it in ranked order. So, we'll be talking about the villains that I think are absolute terrible at the game, horrible, not fun to watch, annoying, or just, I hate them. So, the villains that would get F tier, or maybe even worse than F tier, I think we all know exactly who would start that list. Dave. You thought I was going to say Mal? Well, don't worry. Now, Dave is kind of a controversial villain. Is he really a villain? Is he really not? He's from Pocketoo Island, so they didn't really know what they wanted to do with their villains. And honestly, most of the villains from Pocketoo Island are just pretty bad. Not all of them, but some of them definitely, And how is Dave considered a villain, you may ask? Yeah, he's a whiny little baby, but what does he really do that's really villainous? Oh, he tries to kill Sky in the finale. Never mind. Okay, understandable. Or just seriously, he wants to seriously hurt Sky. Yeah, never mind. I see why this guy's a villain now. You can't forget his manipulative behavior towards Sky. Honestly, this dude is toxic. Sky, get the heck away from this character. This is one of those characters that isn't a villain to be fun or anything. He is not strategic at all. He's not trying to, do something to the game to make it interesting. All this dude is doing is screen hogging, the screen, crying because Sky doesn't want to hook up with him, so he just becomes more mad and insane as the episodes go on, and eventually he wants to hurt Sky just because he finds out she has a boyfriend already. This dude was horrible, horrible, horrible character. I still, 3 years later, say this is easily, without a doubt, the absolute, not just worst villain of the Total Drama series, but the absolute worst character of the Total Drama series. There is no character that I despise more than this character. Not even some of the other bad characters that are on this list that could easily be considered bad villains. This dude, he's just horrible. He isn't even trying to be, a fun villain. His main goal is just to manipulate Sky to win her over? What? Yeah, this dude's messed up. Easily the worst character of all of Total Drama, and it's not even close. And like I said before when I was talking about these characters, Dave is so bad he doesn't even get F tier. He would get like Z tier. I hate Dave with a passion. He is definitely the worst thing that came out of Pocketoo Island. So, alright, second worst villain. That is Mal, 110%. It was around this time when Total Drama really started to flop in its villains. They didn't really know what they wanted to do with their villains, so they didn't really know what they wanted to do with the series at this point. Everything just felt rushed. Characters got derailments, and even potentially died off. Still to this day, we haven't heard from any of the characters who floated away in the balloons. Isn't that weird? Well, All-Stars gave us Mal, who was a personality of Mike, who just ended up becoming the main villain of All-Stars. Really? You have a whole villains team this season. You couldn't pick one of those characters, instead you had to choose one of the heroes, make them bad, and there's that. And Mal wouldn't be that bad of a character if, he didn't feel so cartoony. The problem with Mal is he's super cartoony. It's like the creators forgot that this is supposed to be a reality series in a way, not some sort of cartoon. Like, you gotta have a good balance of both. And unfortunately for All Stars, they did not have a good balance of both. Unlike, the very first season, they had an amazing balance of both. But for this season, absolutely not. And you can tell right down from the villain that this season was just super rushed, and that they just didn't care when it came to, who their villain was going to be. How does Mal work as a villain? He doesn't really think strategically. He just wants to be a bully. He wants to be a brat, and he wants to be a villain. Because his name is Mal, the malicious one. And that's all he is. He isn't humane at all. He doesn't, you can't relate to this character at all. He's just being a villain because why the heck not? Like, he isn't trying. I don't think he even really wants to win. He's just trying to be a villain because that's his personality. Wow, what a dry, one-dimensional character. I mean, I'd take, at least he's being a villain, unlike Dave, who's just so far gone at this point. But he is easily the second worst villain of all time. At least, for this character, unlike Dave, we never have to see him again because Mike completely shut him off with a button. Yeah, this series has became super cartoony. Where's the witty humor? Where's the, fun personalities? Why is everyone so one-dimensional now? Thank goodness we had the reboots, which definitely fixed the series. But boy, some of these mid-seasons were just pretty weird. And I still think All Stars is a little overhated, but yeah, Mal definitely isn't overhated. He definitely deserves the amount of hate. And the amount of screen time this dude got is just insane. Mal is easily, without a doubt, the second worst villain of all time. And the only reason why he got to the final two is because they had to dumb down everyone and make them stupid. Because why would Mike be a villain? And Mike pretends to be nice and, pretends to talk in his normal voice and whatnot. Yeah, this was a horrible idea on the total drama end. So, thank goodness we don't see this dude anymore, but this dude was just annoying. Downright annoying. And he just doesn't... He's not a fun villain. He's not a reality villain. He's just a cartoon villain, so nope. Next up we have Amy, another Pagatu Island character who I just could care less about. This character is, once again, just annoying. All she does is bicker with her sister, and it's not even like the fun bickering like the stepbrothers from Redonkulous Race. No, it's the bickering that, one gets favored over the other. Even the contestants favor Amy over Sammy, which is just really inhumane once again, and just seems very weird. And once again, Amy isn't really much of a villain. She doesn't really act like a villain unless if it's towards her sister. She's just that whiny, bratty character who wants her way, and will stop at nothing to make sure that, is the way that it goes. And of course, any way that her sister gets hurt in. So when she gets her karma, when she gets eliminated by the poison apple, is it mean? Sure. But does she deserve it? Definitely. Yeah, another cartoony villain that doesn't think of anything strategic at all, isn't good, at being a villain, and is just basically considered a villain because she's a brat and a jerk, and she's mean. So, yeah, another bad, not just bad character, but bad villain. So, I mean, a lot of these villains are in this, a lot of these bad villains are in the mid, like Pagatu Island, All Stars. It doesn't surprise me. Let's move to our next one. Next, we have Chase. Once again, this character hardly even is considered a villain. I just think he's more oblivious and stupid, opposed to being a villain. Although at the same time, I guess you can kind of see him being a villain towards Emma. So here we have our first reboot character, and I'm not a big fan of Chase. I think he's just average at best, and boring and even mean at worst. Once again, this character doesn't really have any strategies of being a villain. He's just mean to his girlfriend, or I guess now to his ex. And the problem is that he just never apologizes, so he never learns from his mistakes. Once again, this dude is hardly even considered a villain. He's just considered a villain because he's a jerk to his girlfriend. I'm getting tired of these type of villains. Can we have some actual villains in the show that aren't just, annoying or manipulative in this type of way, or just a jerk to a friend or girlfriend or boyfriend? please, can we have some, or sister, or sibling, whatever? Can we please have someone else? Well, let's find out. Next up, we have Sugar. Here you have another one of these villains that isn't really villainous, just more of a bully than a villain. And I can't stand bully characters. Not only are they jerks, and they're mean, but they're not fun watching, they're just so stereotypic. And that's exactly what Sugar is. And honestly, Sugar just feels like a mix of so many other Total Drama characters. One of the ones that I think everyone thinks of is a female Owen, which, I mean, who can't see that? She's almost like a mix of Owen and Lashana in a way, but just all the absolute worst things possible. Sugar is definitely one of my least favorite Pocket 2 Island characters, and I think it's just because that she is a bully to Ella, and then she lets a tree fall on Jasmine, and she's annoying in the final three, and she's just an annoying character as is, and she isn't really that much of a villain. She's just a bully once again. She, once again, doesn't show any strategic, moments in the show, not that I remember at least. And I just remember when I rewatched this back 2 years ago, or this season, and I was just like, oh, this character is a lot worse than I remembered. Just because she is just such a bully to Ella, who is the nicest person in Pocket 2 Island. One of the nicest characters of all time, actually. So, seeing Sugar bully Ella just because, why the heck not? It just is annoying, and it's not fun to watch. It's not good writing, and this character sucks. She sucks. I do not like Sugar, and she definitely is in like the F tier of like villains I hate and I can't stand. So, I think there's maybe one more villain in this category, then thank goodness, hopefully we are moving out of the category. Also, I just want to say Chris and Chef aren't counting. I want to count the contestants only. So, with that, let's move on to our next character, and that is Ezekiel, or more for Goblin Ezekiel. I'm not a big fan of this character as is, and after World Tour, he just became an even worse character. Not only was this idiot stay on the plane, but then he turned into this. Okay? It seems very random and odd. I'm not a big fan of Goblin Ezekiel. I think he ruins any moment he's on screen. I just roll my eyes. The worst has to be World Tour, where he literally burns Heather's money. Really? This woman deserved it. But no, Zeke has to come in and ruin it and burn the money because, why the heck not? So I don't blame Heather for trying to steal it in Revenge of the Island. She is a villain after all. But unlike Heather, Zeke is, basically a goblin. He's stupid. He isn't, he's not necessarily aware of things. He likes Anne-Marie, and then he tries to kill Chris in All-Stars. So, yeah, not really a villain, and I hardly wouldn't even count this character as a villain. But I guess he is a villain. Here he is. Easily, once again, one of the worst villains of all time. Just mainly that World Tour scene. Why, Ezekiel, why? Anyway, that's pretty much all the F tier characters. The rest of the characters I would put in D tier and above. So let's get to our first D tier character that I can think of immediately, which that character is Justin. Remind me, why is this guy a villain again? Because I don't remember. I don't really remember him doing anything at all. And this guy would almost get F tier if it wasn't for him actually kind of thinking of a few strategic things. Or maybe not even thinking, but just using certain aspects of himself, like his body and how muscular he is. So all the women fall for him, like in the last episode of Island, where Izzy hands the money over to him just because he is hot. So he uses that to his charm, which actually does work, and it can actually be kind of strategic in a way, until obviously he uses it too much and it just doesn't work anymore. So he tries to think strategic. Well, that doesn't work either. Then he tries to think of as a villain. Well, we hardly see many scenes of him as a villain. And honestly, he did a pretty horrible job of being a villain. Half the time, I don't even remember this character being a villain. Courtney is more the main villain of action than Justin is. And, I'm not a big fan of Justin as a character as is. Especially since there's another character similar to Justin who is like 1,000 times better than him. Justin just kind of exists, and he's a boring character in my opinion. And as a villain, he's definitely not the greatest villain either. He's better than any of the F tier characters, but that's about it. So, any other D tiers? Let me look through. Oh yeah, can't forget about Lightning from Revenge of the Island. Here's the thing. I'm not a big fan of Lightning. Never have been, never will be. I'm just not a big fan of Lightning. I think there's many better Revenge of the Island characters that are either heroes or villains. The only Revenge of the Island character that I think this dude does a better job of being a villain is Mal from All Stars. But other than that, all the other Revenge of the Island villains are much better. Why? For starters, like I said, I'm not a big fan of Lightning. I don't really care about this character that much. Yeah, he's kind of dim-witted and stuff. He does have a few funny moments that I guess are funny, but I'm just not a big fan of Lightning. I think he takes things with Cameron just way too far, and he really takes Cameron winning to heart. And he does not like it for some reason, and that just basically turns over a leaf and shows everyone Lightning's true colors. Now, thankfully, we have the one, the only, Zoe to stop Lightning, but Lightning eliminates Zoe, so big whoop for that. Luckily, though, but this is one of those villains that I don't enjoy watching. He just kind of turned into a villain at the end of Revenge because why not? They got rid of the other villains. They got rid of Scott and they got rid of Joe. So who do we have left? I guess we can make Lightning a villain. I guess it's better than making Mal, but boy, that's a low bar to set. Lightning is just, once again, doesn't really act like a villain. He's just more of a bully. In fact, he's even worse of a bully than someone like Sugar is. Because this dude is strong, so all he has to do is flick Cameron and Cameron's knocked over. But luckily Cameron is much more smarter than Lightning too. So I guess it's neat seeing the brain versus brawn thing in the end. But Lightning had nothing strategic going on. He just wanted Cameron in the finale just so he could pick on him and bully him. Yeah, a lot of the bully characters are here at the bottom just because they're not villains. Look at characters like Heather, Alejandro. They're not being bullies. They're being villains. Like, there's a difference. Mal, even, he's not being a bully. He's being a villain. He's just a very horribly written villain. But Lightning, he's just a bully. And they just labeled him as a villain because bullies are villains. That is true. But, hey, it's just not fun to watch. I'd much rather see characters like Joe or Scott make it further than this dude. And, unfortunately, in some areas, he ended up winning. Why? Why would you ever watch that version? Cameron winning is definitely the way better ending, but yeah, I don't like Lightning. He's definitely a D tier villain. The only reason why he's better than some of the others is because I guess he has some strategic moment, but nah, he's even worse than Justin, I think. Alright, there's one more character I'd put in D tier, and that character would be Eva. Here we have another bully character. Now, while I will say she wasn't really horrible in the first 2 episodes of Total Drama Island, when she came back in Merge, she definitely was not that fun to watch, mainly just because all she did was just bully the other contestants. Mainly Bridget, just because, gasp, she was the only girl left on her original tribe. It's so weird because Bridget's like the nicest person there, but yet Eva's gonna go and bully her once again. Not acting like a villain, acting like a bully. Oh, I'm getting so tired of these bully characters. How many of these characters do we need? Like, can't we just have full-on just villain characters? No, not cartoony Mal characters. I mean actual fun, villains that work for this type of show. But no, Eva just has to be a big bully. She's easily a D tier. I will say she was better after the show, because she did have some funny moments here and there, but Island definitely wasn't her strong moments. Next up we have Courtney. Courtney is in our first C tier, because I feel like she does do a much better job at being a villain than the other characters we talked about. However, what we've seen of her on the show has been a lot more emotional than anything. Like, in Island, she gets out way too early, so we don't really see much of her villain side. Season 2 is when she's mainly the villain, but she's almost more whinier, or just trying to control Duncan. And then Season 3, I mean, she starts off fine, but then once the whole love triangle started, then that went haywire. And then Season 5, she just is there, I guess, to find another boyfriend, aka Scott. She doesn't find one, but it just kind of happens. And then Sunday Muddy Sunday happened, and everything went out the window. She's a very, very, very complex character. And, I mean, she is a great character. I like Courtney, but as a villain, she's just all over the place. Or, in Alejandro's words, made Courtney lose control. That's literally what Courtney was in all the seasons she was in. Except for Island. Even Island, but I guess the most villainous moment is probably during the end of Total Drama where she took over the blimp and started flying it around and would only help certain people up if they would give her the money. So I guess that's definitely her being the most villainous. But in the show, she's just more what's the word? She's more like keeps an eye out, I guess, if you want to call it that, because of the whole Gwen and Duncan thing. So, unfortunately, because of that, it ruined a lot of what could have been some great villainous moments with Courtney. And I just think they made her way too complex, and they didn't really know what they wanted to do with her anymore. So, C tier for Courtney. Next up, we have MK. So, I'm glad the reboot characters did a much better job in their villains, but kind of like Courtney, MK just kind of ebbs and flows around with her being a villain. Yeah, she's a villain, you can tell, but I mean, I've only seen both of the reboots one time, so I don't really remember much of her strategy, but at least it was something like she was actually thinking strategically and trying to be a villain. But in the first season, she got voted out too early before anything could happen, and season 2, while she did work with Julia is more well known as the main villain. So MK was just kind of the second in command, if you know what I mean. Kind of like how Disventure Camp season 4 is, or 5 is, with Finn and Ara, or Ara, whatever her name is. Ara's kind of like the second in command of Finn. But with Finn voted out, I'm kind of curious to see how that goes. Anyway, back to MK. She's a fine character. She's fine for a villain, but it's just not anything memorable. I don't remember many things that she did, like only seeing this one time. Like, I can remember even how much I hate Pocket 2 Island. I can remember the whole scene with Scarlet turning complete psycho. But MK, I can't remember a thing she did, but I think there's just more memorable villains out there. Like Bowie. Bowie is an interesting character. Obviously he kind of acted as like the main villain in season 1, him and Julia, whereas season 2 it was more MK and Julia. I don't mind Bowie as a character. He's fine. He's not one of my absolute favorites though. But I guess he was actually, being a villain. But it wasn't just the cartoony villain like we saw from Mal or someone dumb like that. No, he could still be, a humane person and stuff like that. So it's nice seeing that where they can still be relatable, but they play the game as a villain. That is how you play it as a villain. The only thing is, I'm not a big fan of Bowie, so he has to go in C tier. But I will say he would be the highest of the C tiers. And I think that would be it for C tier. So next we move on to the B tier villains, starting with Axel. So Axel's kind of like Eva in a way where she isn't really much of a villain, opposed to her just being a tough lady and being kind of a bully character. Kind of like a less intimidating Joe, if you know what I mean. But she's more similar to Eva from the original series. In fact, they're so similar, they were the second people out in season 1. The only difference is that Axel isn't quite as, she doesn't snap quite as easy as Eva does. And she got her comeback in season 2 to kind of redeem herself a little bit from what she did in season 1. Axel hardly counts as a villain, honestly. I would hardly even count her as a villain, but here she is. I mean, she's definitely a great character, and I love the her and Ripper storyline. So it is great to see her just kind of step back from being a villain, maybe. But yeah, I guess if she would be on a Heroes v Villains season, she would definitely be on the villain side. So I guess she could be a villain. She just doesn't do much strategically. But I just love Axel, so I don't care. Next character is Duncan. Oh, the Duncan man himself. Been in 4 seasons, and we still haven't seen him ever since he floated off in the bubble. Once again, Duncan's another very complex character like Courtney, although he's a lot more chiller, and then I think he has a better strategy going on opposed to Courtney. Like, Season 1, he was just the big tough guy, where he could be a bully at times, but he could also think strategically, and being a bully wasn't just his main personality. Season 2, well, I don't know. I think they kind of leaned a little too hard on the bully side of things, although I will say out of all the bully characters that we have, Duncan is definitely the best of the bully characters. Because unlike characters like Lightning, who if he sees Cameron, then Cameron, you better start running for your life. At least for the Duncan and Harold things, Duncan could still be, a humane person around Harold. And, they could still sleep together in the same cabin, and heck, even get along sometimes, which was really nice to see. But, Duncan is still a villain. He thinks more like a villain, of course, than a hero. And when it came to Season 3, where he just quit straight up off the bat, so we didn't see much of him, but when he did come back, I guess he was still kind of acting like a villain, but I think the villain trophy was headed to other people that season, so Duncan just kind of more existed, but obviously still acting more like a villain. Kissing Gwen, man. And then, of course, Season 5, 5, All-Stars, where Duncan was immediately on the villains tribe and acted like a villain up until they decided to make him act nice. Which, yeah, I guess it was kind of funny to see a big, tough Duncan be nice. And it didn't go on for too long that it got annoying either. Like, it ended at a good time when Duncan was eliminated. And yeah, he blew up Chris's mansion. So, yeah, that's definitely villainous behavior. Once again, he's just such a complex character, though, but I feel like he does a better job at being a villain than Courtney does, even if he isn't like a main villain of a season. I mean, the most would probably be Season 2, but Courtney's more of the villain of Season 2, so probably not them. But Duncan is a great character overall, so I think B tier works well for him. Next up we have Max. So yeah, it's been a minute since we've been to Pocket 2 Island, but we're back. Out of all the weird characters we got in Pocket 2 Island, Max is probably one of the better characters. And for a villain, yeah, he doesn't really work once again, but I kind of like what they were doing with him. He isn't really that intimidating, but he really wants to be. So, he almost acts like Duncan from All-Stars in a way. Like, when he takes the baby and wants to keep the baby. It's funny, and I like seeing him and Scarlet work together as well. But he's not so intimidating when Scarlet shows her true colors. So, Max is just more of a comic relief villain, I guess. But I think there's better comic relief villains out there, like Yzma and Krong from Emperor's New Groove. But Max is fine enough, so B tier it is. Next up we have Ripper. So, like Axel, Ripper isn't really much of a villain. He's just maybe more almost kind of like the bully character without being a bully. I don't know, maybe the intimidating character. Yeah, the intimidating, I think that works well. Just like his girlfriend Axel. And just like his girlfriend Axel, he isn't really much of a villain, but I guess if you would categorize him as hero or villain, he would go in the villain category. And sometimes that's all you really need to do to make it all the way up in the B tier, and also to have some really, really lazy villains, Mal, Dave, to put yourself into B tier as well. And I really like Ripper as a character too. He's a great character, and one of my faves from the, from the 2023, the reboots, that's what I'm thinking of. And I love his storyline with Axel in Season 2. I think I'm with majority here, with many people agreeing that Season 2 Ripper was much more fun than Season 1 Ripper. But, yeah, nothing else I gotta say. Ripper's a great character, and B tier it is. Next up we have Scarlet. So, yep, there's all of our Pocket 2 Island villains all finished. Big surprise this series was done. Scarlet works better than a lot of the other characters we talked about in Pagato Island, mainly because she actually was smart and actually thought, strategically. The only problem is the episode that she freaked out and wanted to blow up the whole island. So then she definitely kind of blew her game in that sense of that. What is it with the newer season just becoming so cartoony? Where's the witty humor? Where's the relatable to any of this? This is just a big cartoon at this point. The island being artificial. Well, anyway, while Scarlet is once again like Max, just a fine character, she does work better as a villain until she becomes super cartoony and just wants to blow up the whole island. So, yep, B tier it is. Next up, and probably the last of the B tier, I have Scott. Oh, good old Scott. As a character, he definitely is more like a high A or S tier. But as a villain, well, I guess I can see kind of what he was doing in Revenge, with him trying to lose to get everyone on his team out. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't think it's really a really smart idea to constantly keep losing, especially when people start, wondering why they keep losing. And then when he got switched to the other team, then he tried to get them to lose a lot too. Yeah, Scott's a very interesting character, to say the least. And him as a villain doesn't really work that well, I think. Having him as more the... I think the way they wrote him in All-Stars was much better, where he wants to be kind of this tough and strong character, but is just super weakened out by so many things, whether if that's falling for Courtney, getting constantly hurt or beaten up, or, of course, Fang. Like, I think that works way better than him just being straight up a villain. So, unfortunately, I'd have to put Scott in B tier just because he doesn't really work well as a villain. But he's still definitely one of my favorite characters, so I can't put him any lower than this. Next up, we have Stephanie. Okay, never mind. I guess this is our last B tier. Is she even a villain, or is she just kind of a hardcore girlfriend to Ryan? Who knows? Honestly, I really loved the story of Stephanie and Ryan, and some may argue it was annoying because they were just constantly bickering, or like she was horrible to him, but at least she was, like, it didn't feel like she was a bully to him, because not only is she an adult, but Ryan also isn't going to let her take any, any swings at him either. So he is going to stand up for himself. So, and if anything, it's just more of a fun rivalry between the two. And they both eventually make up towards the end too, so it's not like we have a bad ending. Like, I'd take this any day over the Lightning and Cameron stuff that we got from Revenge of the Island. Any day. Or like the Sugar and Ella. Like, this isn't even a bully. It's just that Stephanie doesn't really count as a villain, but okay. She's a villain, I guess, just because if you put her on a villain or hero side, I guess she would be on the villain side. Great character, fine villain, but yeah. Next up, we have Blanely. Now, originally 3 years ago, I wasn't a big fan of Blanely, but as time goes on, I really enjoy her character and just how goofy of a character she is overall. She's the main villain of the Aftermath shows in World Tour, which is a really great breath of fresh air after Jeff being the villain. Oh, that's someone I forgot. Jeff! Well, Jeff would easily be in an F tier as well, if that's the case. Well, anyway, for Blanely's case, she actually seems like more of a villain, but she can also still be humane. Sometimes. But I don't really know what her cases are of being a villain, just because she likes the drama. That's probably the main reason why, but it's just funny. And anytime she does something, she always gets karma back for it. So it's not like she's getting away with something like Mal. Ugh, we don't talk about him. So I'd probably put Blanely in an A tier just because she does do a great job at things. It's just that she gets her karma back right away. So unfortunately, I mean, she's not an S tier for sure, but A tier I think works good for her. Next up we have Jacques and Jose. Oh, it was so great seeing Redonkulous Race return back to good villains. Not just your boring villains that doesn't work, bullies or annoying, whatever. No, these are actually villains that are tons of fun to watch. Jacques and Jose are hilarious in the Redonkulous Race. There are so many hilarious moments with them, and I love how they start off as they're trying to be nice and friendly, or pretending to be nice and friendly, but their true colors slowly reveal as time goes on. Jose is definitely the more villain one of the two, but both of these guys together are just so funny and so hilarious. Their main goal is just to win the $1 million, but it doesn't work. So they don't really act like their full villain selves until like later in the show. But seeing these characters, they're just great. They're definitely like high A tier. Next up, we have Julia. So here's another great character from the reboot seasons. She is basically the main villain because she made it all the way to Final Four in the first season and then the Final Three in season 2. So that's really great. Julia is one of those characters who almost feels like a reboot of Heather in a way. However, I definitely don't enjoy her as much as Heather. She's not quite as funny. She doesn't have Alejandro, and, you know, her tactics ain't quite as good. But she's still definitely a great villain and definitely the best of the reboot characters. Next up is Scary Girl, or Lauren. This character is just so random, yet so funny. Yeah, she's one-dimensional, but it's a one-dimensional that actually works really well. Now, she isn't really being strategically a villain. She's just kind of being a villain because why the heck not? But unlike characters like Mal, which gets annoying, she's just a fun character to watch. And she can be humane with the other characters, just creepy. So she unfortunately doesn't make it far in either season. In fact, she's the first one voted out in season 2. But she's just a hilarious, goofy character overall that she has to make A tier. And we are now down to the last 3 characters. So these would all be considered, in my opinion, the S tier characters. Starting with, of course, Jo, the last person from Revenge of the Island. Unlike Scott, Jo works so much better as a villain in both of her seasons. Unfortunately, she isn't in it long in All Stars, but she at least is on the villain side, and we can see, you know, some fun moments between her and Heather. In Revenge of the Island, though, she's definitely the main villain. She's definitely manipulative, and she can control, you know, people, but she's still she's still a human at the end of the day. She's still a teenager. You know, she's only apparently 16. They're all just 16, I guess. But she's a funny character, too, and I love how she gives everyone nicknames. And who knows, maybe she has something going on with Brick, too, who's definitely not a villain. But Jo overall is just such a great, hilarious, fun, and just a great character overall, and a great villain. She has that great middle ground of being a cartoon. She can be a cartoon villain, but also a reality villain as well, a reality TV villain as well. So Jo is definitely great, but come on, is she really going to defeat the king and queen of the best villains? It's just which one is better at being a villain, or which character do I like better? Well, it's tough because one of them I think, you know, I like better, maybe a little better than the other, but I think the other does maybe a little bit of a better job of being a villain. It's tough. I guess the next character I'd have to do is Heather. Now, Heather would easily get number 1 of which villain is my favorite, but which villain had the better strategy or game? And don't get me wrong, Heather definitely did an amazing job, but I think her boyfriend did a tad better. But I think it's just because Heather kind of made everyone not like her by the time World Tour came around. In Season 1, she did so many things to everybody that nobody liked her anymore, although the things she did were definitely very strategic, and she is definitely a very big icon. Why is she in 5 seasons, you may ask? Well, she's an icon, just like Owen is, but even Owen isn't in 5 seasons, or 4 seasons, I mean. But Heather overall is just a fun character to watch, and she can be funny too. Each time, you know, she gets hurt or she gets karma, it's always hilarious, just her reactions and everything. And she is pretty good, you know, at being a villain in Total Drama Island. She feels like the great, you know, mix between cartoon and also reality TV, not just one or the other. Or not just full-on cartoon. She can be humane and can be nice to people when she wants to, but she didn't really explore that more until World Tour in Action. Action, she kind of took more of a little bit of a backseat, but World Tour, she kind of started coming back out again, but she was more of the anti-hero in a way. Isn't that fun to watch? Where she was still definitely a villain, but in an anti-hero type of way against her boyfriend. And then, of course, All Stars, she was just the comic relief character at this point, and she was fun to watch. Once again, of course, being on the villain side, but ended up getting voted out because of her boyfriend, which is just hilarious seeing these two against each other. So, it's you can't write a villain any better than Heather. Well, maybe you can. Maybe. And that character is Alejandro. Oh, boyfriend and girlfriend, right? I love these two, Heather and Alejandro. They are great, and they are easily some of my favorite contestants of all of Total Drama, and some of my favorite, and definitely my two favorite villains of Total Drama. I just compare Alejandro's first season to Heather's first season, where both were the main villains. While both did a good job, I think Alejandro's strategy was better. It was kind of similar to Justin's, but unlike Justin, where we just kind of forgot about it, Alejandro made it very clear that that was going to be his main goal. He wanted to flirt with the women to not only, get the boys messed up in the head, but also, of course, get the girls messed up. First Bridget, and then Lashana, and then Courtney, and even Heather herself. So it's just hilarious. Even characters that we don't see much, like Lindsay, fell for him a little bit. It's just great. He doesn't have to do anything. They just love Alejandro just because the same way they love Justin from, Island. Just because he is strong. Or as Alejandro says, quoting Alejandro, he's young. Or what does he say? He's tall, tan, young, and handsome, as he says in the Condor song. And it works because he gets all the girls, including the main villain Heather herself, to fall for Alejandro. But what's even funnier is Alejandro himself falls for Heather. So it just makes him just that much fun to watch as well, because he's trying to be a villain, but he also is getting distracted himself by how much he, likes Heather. And seeing both of these icons just go against each other in World Tour is, it's absolute cinema. Like, everybody loves these characters, and it's obvious why. And All Stars, he's kind of the main villain in a way, until Mal shows up. I don't know. All the villains have their own spotlight, I guess. Including Gwen, who's for some reason on the villains tribe. But Alejandro and Heather mainly are just fighting for most of the season until Alejandro gets Heather voted out. But what's funny is that Heather became an anti-hero against Alejandro in World Tour, but then Alejandro became the anti-hero to Mal in All-Stars. Everyone was rooting for Alejandro against Mal, especially the episode where Alejandro got out, and it was nice seeing him try to reveal the secrets to the other characters. So he became the Heather from World Tour. Isn't that great? But this character, once again, just like Heather, after her first season, no one trusts Alejandro anymore. He also is definitely one of my favorite characters to watch in All Stars as well, just because he became kind of the comic relief character once so many of the other ones got eliminated. Alejandro is great, and he's definitely one of my favorite characters, and personally I think he had a little bit of a better game than Heather did. So in that case, I'd say Alejandro, in my opinion, is the best villain out of all the villains that were in Total Drama. With that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. It was fun to make. It's fun talking about the Total Drama villains and just characters in general. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Have a happy Easter, and I'll see you guys next time. Have a great day.